So I've got a lifelong history with the Santana band. I was introduced to the music of Carlos and the group of musicians who call themselves Santana at a very early age, and immediately fell in love with their music. Over the years, I've been able to completely immerse myself in Santana's discography. Most of it good, some of it absolutely spectacular, and some of it absolutely spectacularly bad. Subpar if I want to be a bit more diplomatic. So I was reluctantly optimistic when Santana announced they'd be releasing Blessings and Miracles, their 26th studio album. I mean, their previous two albums were a huge musical triumph. The classic lineup reunion album Santana 4 in 2016 and the fantastically original Africa Speaks in 2019. Those two albums did not buy into the usual modern-day Santana trope of using a different guest vocalist to sing on each song. You know, that trope that began on the massively successful Supernatural. Not using guest vocalists gave Santana 4 and Africa Speaks a unified, cohesive feel that's been missing from all those previous guest artist-laden releases. So as soon as I heard that Blessings and Miracles was going to go back to business as usual, I rolled my eyes and braced myself for the worst. Okay, this album is most definitely not anywhere near as bad as what I was expecting it to be. In fact, you know what? The music on this album is pretty damn good. No, I'll take it even further. A lot of the music on this album is pretty great. Not all, of course. There are some duds, but more on that later. The band is in top form here. They're all firing on all the cylinders and it shows. First, I'll list the highlights. Starting things off are the instrumental tracks Ghost of Future Pole, New Light, and Santana Celebration. Blessings and Miracles could not have kicked things off in a better way. These songs are classic Santana, in the same vein as Jingo, Incident at Neshabor, Se Acabó, Toussaint Louverture, and Para los Rumberos from the first three albums. Just a great Afro-Cuban rock jam. Joy is a pretty enjoyable song. It features Chris Stapleton on vocals, and the music gives a sort of chill reggae vibe. Move is even better. Rob Thomas is back on vocal, and the music is high energy, much like the massive hit Smooth, but without the irresistibly catchy hooks and Latin rhythm. Solid song though. I mean, you can't always have the second best-selling song of all time. A damn good cover of the classic Procol Harum song Whiter Shade of Pale is next, and it has Steve Winwood singing. And he really knocks it out of the park here. His voice is absolutely perfect for this song. Break and She's Fire are solid songs as well. These have a sort of modern-day hip-hop vibe to them. Not usually my cup of tea, but enjoyable nonetheless. But my favorite track on the album is Breathing Underwater. Apparently, this song is written, and I think sung as well, by Carlos's daughter Stella. I love this track. It's mellow, with a dark, brooding and emotional undertone. Not something you'd expect from Santana, but it is most welcome. Finally, there's Angel Choir Altogether, a very jazzy piece featuring jazz great Chick Corea. This is a great track. I only wish it was a bit longer. It seems to finish just as it really gets going. This song harkens back to earlier Santana albums, Caravanserai and Welcome, or even Carlos's solo album, Swing of Delight. And it could fit right in with either of these. So the highs on this album are really, really high. And truly, I can't think of another band making music of this quality 50 plus years after its inception. Okay, on to the tracks that don't really make the grade for me. First, Rumbalero. This song was written by Carlos's son, Salvador. It's way too techno house music-y vibe for me. Hard pass on this one. If you're into that sort of thing, of course, this might be one of the high points of the album. But not me. I skip it every time. Then, there's three straight-up rock tracks. Peace Power, America for Sale, and Mother Yes. I'm scrambling just to think of something to say about these tracks. They are incredibly generic. I mean, they're not bad. I don't feel the urge to skip to the next song or anything, but there is something so meh about them. as if they were created by an AI algorithm with rock as its only baseline. Especially with the better songs of the album to compare them to, these three seem especially forgettable. Finally, there's Song for Cindy, and album closer Ghost of Future Pole 2. The former is a guitar solo instrumental which, I think is safe to assume, Carlos meant to be in the same league as Samba Pati, Europa, and others. The latter is another guitar solo instrumental, and that's it. Nothing really to write home about. Which brings me neatly along to my final point of criticism. And this one's a doozy. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice I haven't said a single word so far about Carlos Santana's guitar playing. Brace yourselves because this won't be pretty. I know that any criticism aimed at Carlos's playing will be met with a lot of hostility, so I'll tread carefully. Carlos Santana is a legend and master, and really has nothing left to prove. However, that doesn't excuse what I hear in his performance on this album. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, let me just say that Carlos Santana is one of my all-time favorite guitarists, and objectively one of the greatest of all time. He is one of my inspirations for my own guitar playing, right there along with David Gilmour, Jimi Hendrix, and Duane Allman. Carlos has a list of songs a mile long that are simply brilliant, and that can never be taken away from him. Now, having said that, his guitar playing on Blessings and Miracles is the absolute worst of his career, by a mile. I have 3 reasons to explain why this is so. Number 1, his guitar tone. Listen to Carlos's tone on albums throughout his career. Abraxas, Welcome, Borboleta, Amigos, Moonflower, Marathon, Supernatural, even most recently Africa Speaks. It's always a balance of loud and quiet, clean and high gain, and compression when needed. Here on Blessings and Miracles, the best way to describe what I hear is bloated. If a guitar could sound obese, it'd sound like this. It's just a fat, ultra-compressed, high-gain blob of a guitar tone that takes up all the space and attention in the song. Especially in quiet sections, the guitar just sounds painfully out of place and doesn't match the mood of the music around it. Never before have I heard such an unpleasant sound emit from Carlos's amplifier. Number 2. When Carlos plays his guitar. You know, there is such a thing as rhythm guitar, and I'm fairly certain Carlos has completely forgotten all about it. This man plays lead guitar licks the entire album. He doesn't stop. In between every line sung, he's there, aimlessly wandering on the fretboard. It's an extremely frustrating listen, especially as a guitarist. There should be moments where the music has a chance to breathe, space to give listeners opportunities to immerse themselves in the music, reflect on what they hear. When it's finally time for Carlos to rip into a proper guitar solo, there's nothing special about it because you've been hearing him soloing non-stop already. He plays licks during the verses, during the choruses, during the bridges. It's a constant onslaught of aimless guitar noodling. Blessings and Miracles has a very wide variety of genres and moods throughout, but Carlos's playing does the impossible and makes every song sound kind of like the last. The guitar fills are extremely repetitive. It sounds like he's playing the exact same thing in each and every song, just copied and pasted. There is a time and a place for guitar solos, and on this album, Carlos has decided that the time and place is all the time and every place. I already know a lot of you will hear this and say, "Hey, Mr. Know-It-All Flying Pig Music, Carlos Santana has always done this style of playing. It's his unique signature." Wrong. Super wrong. Insanely wrong. Carlos has not always done this. He started doing it right around the time Supernatural came out. I assume because the producers wanted to hear his guitar right next to the guest artist's voice. But this kind of interplay between guitar and vocal has its rightful place. It should be used sparingly. It's like salt on a plate of food. Too much and it can ruin everything. A few flourishes of guitar in the right places can really spice up a song and boost the positives that the song has going for it. But Carlos has gotten to the point where he isn't sprinkling some guitar here and there anymore, but instead is pouring his guitar in every space he can possibly find. Again, listen to Africa Speaks, Santana's previous album. His playing there is exactly the opposite from this album, in both tone and in his choice of laying down solos. I really truly hope Mr. Carlos Santana hears this from someone and starts to reel it in for their next release. Number 3. Carlos's actual playing. I don't know if it's Carlos Santana's age catching up to him or some other reason, but he cannot move his fingers quickly anymore. Instead of adapting his playing style, which he most certainly is able to do, it sounds like he's forcing his hands to play lightning fast like he used to. The result is an extremely sloppy approach to the soloing. I could not believe some of the solos I heard on this album. No joke, no exaggeration, they sound like first run-through rehearsal takes. I don't know what is happening. It doesn't matter who the artist is, from newcomers to decades-old veterans. A record producer's job is to get the best performance out of the musicians. Maybe because he's a legend and he's been doing this for so long, they're afraid to tell him that something doesn't sound right. Afraid to tell him no. Every artist needs some kind of restraint, and when those restraints are gone and they're free to follow any whim that crosses their mind, the art suffers from it. They need someone to tell them, no, that doesn't sound good, do it again, do it a different way. Song for Cindy and the album closer Ghost of Future Pull 2 are the two songs most blatantly showing the sloppiness of his guitar playing. Trying to play too many notes in too short a time frame just makes everything sound like a muddy blur of guitar. And it doesn't help that as soon as he trips up, he kicks on the wah-wah pedal and just starts up a cacophony of noise. The thing is, Carlos is more than capable of playing solos that aren't lightning fast, yet beautiful and full of emotion. Samba Pa Ti, Flor de Luna, Welcome, or even most recently, Sueños from Santana 4 are great examples of this. Each note expertly chosen and executed at the right time for maximum effect. No fancy lightning quick fingers needed, and still completely recognizable as Carlos Santana. On Blessings and Miracles, it's obvious he can't play like he used to anymore, but he's desperately trying to. Carlos sounds completely out of his element, and for me, it's heartbreaking. And it seems everyone is turning a blind eye to this. No one is mentioning this in any review I've read. It could be because critics want to spare Carlos's feelings, or they don't want to be critical towards a music veteran, or some other contrived reason. But if I hear something that's crap, I'm gonna call it out, and then hopefully it'll get better. In closing, Blessings and Miracles can best be summed up as both the best and worst of Santana. Solid songwriting, great musicianship amongst the band members, but unfortunately, it is ultimately dragged way down by the performance of the de facto leader of the group. The sad part is, it could have easily been avoided, with a little more patience in the studio to get the best performance from Carlos Santana himself.